Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the second episode of the Teachers Run podcast. And today we've got our newest guest, and our guest is Richard Barry. Now, Richard is a school teacher, he's a primary school teacher, but he has spent the last 10 years or so of his teaching, sort of education experience, if you like, teaching outside of the UK. As well as being a teacher, Richard is also one of my oldest and one of my closest friends. And we've known each other since we were about 9 years old. So this is a real brilliant time for us to share probably conversations that we have with each other whenever we see each other, which unfortunately isn't as often as I would like, so quite often over the phone. So Richard, welcome.
Well, Dan, thank you very much for the lovely introduction there. And absolutely, the more I think about it now, we certainly have known each other for a very, very long time. Which I think now, going all the way back to 9, 10 years old, just started off playing hockey. And here we are today then with our own families.
Yeah, exactly. So when I first met Richard, I'd just started playing roller hockey, and I think I was 8 or 9 years old, and we happened to actually live on the same street. Yet we didn't know each other because we only lived together at the same street for about a month. But we got to know each other really, really well through playing roller hockey, and then since then we've had our families. We know each other's families really well, and our friends are all really close. And it's brilliant that we're both in a position now where we've got really similar interests. We've gone on slightly different paths, but our interests are still really, really similar. And Rich, you want to just talk a little bit about your kind of teaching background and what you've been doing over the last few years, because it is really interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So my sort of teaching background extends to about 5 years now as the conventional methods of, classroom teacher. I've just been teaching in Russia for 3 years at a very sort of large organization, an international school. Prior to that, I was teaching in China for a year just before COVID. And then before that, I was teaching back in the UK, doing a bit of supply work and a lot of assistant teaching as well, which was nice to go into different schools and just sort of sit back a little bit and observe the bigger picture and seeing what's going on. Then obviously, like before that, coming away from that conventional part there, I've been working with children in sports and coaching for many years. I spent a couple of summers, about 7 summers actually, over in Milford, Pennsylvania at what people would class as like Camp America, and had an incredible experience there. And I know, Dan, obviously you had that experience as well, and both sort of took that to its best, and here we are today.
Yeah, I mean, we were both sat in my living room at my parents' house signing up for Camp America at the exact same time. And I think we had these visions that we'd be jetting off to the same place. And that wasn't what happened. We both went on our own kind of trips, didn't we? We went on our own directions. And I know for me and for you as well, it did really help direct where we ended up going. And I came back from that and started a little business where I was working with preschool children, doing PE or motivator sets, if you like, and which eventually led into teaching in primary schools. And you stuck with the traveling and working in America for a long time and really seeing the world, didn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I took that as a point then. I remember I returned 1 year though, and obviously you just said about your the PE you did in the preschools. Obviously, I took over there for a couple of weeks, just while I was funding for my next trip, which was great. It was from 18 months upwards in a preschool. But then I took it as an opportunity to go, right, I'm going to go and explore the world and find out what it's all about. So I traveled all through, your typical Southeast Asia. Lived in Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and just continued to sort of explore. And then at that point, then is when I turned around and said, right, I'm coming back to the UK now. I redid my studies, A levels. I had to do my GCSEs to boost the grade because it was higher in Wales. And here we are now, a degree, and currently studying my master's in education as well.
It's a fantastic journey and something I've watched your journey over so many years and have been really interested to see all the different places you've been able to go and the teaching experiences and often wonder we're very different because I went from teaching in one school. I've taught in the same school for nearly 13 years. And my experiences there have grown massively because the school's changed so much and it's grown and people have changed and the experiences and opportunities have changed massively. And you've obviously had a massively wide variety of teaching experiences across so many different platforms and different schools, different countries, and virtually as a lot as well. So it'd be really interesting, hopefully, as we continue talking, to dip in and out of things that you've picked up from different places. But what I was hoping to spend a bit of time talking about, as we are on the Teachers Run Club podcast, is running. So we've been for a few runs together, and I know you've been training and completed your own half marathons and marathons over the last few years. But something that really interests me about your running, and I pick up a lot from Strava, is how you use it as a form of meditation or a form of escape from that
Mm.
work, or using it as work-life balance, I suppose. So, yeah, what are your kind of thoughts on that, and how did you come about or decide to use running in that format?
It's funny, obviously, as soon as you mentioned that, you're seeing it from a different perspective to me, but I think you're completely correct. Like the way that obviously I put my captions up on Strava, it does make sense that you would perceive it that way. It definitely is a form of meditation for me, Dan. Like even just the other day, just going out and just kind of getting lost. Since I started running, it's just been about sort of I've wanted to run. You see people do it, and you watch it, and it just made me want to run. So one day while I was doing my observation to get into university, this is back in 2018, I just went, oh, well, if I can run just 20 minutes a day, that's nothing. Like that's 2% of your day. If I can't afford that time in my day, then what can I do? Like, so I started going off and I ran and I was like, that's close to a 5K. I was doing about 25 minutes in the end. I was like, whoa, I wonder if I can get my time down to 20 minutes or go below 20 minutes for a 5K. And it was a challenge. I remember that like it was coming up, like it was February time I started, and I was getting faster and faster and just getting closer, but it really took that extra effort. Like the final day that I did it, I felt like I almost killed myself. I think I did like a 19:38. I was absolutely chuffed, over the moon, completed my sub 25K. And then I stopped for about 4 or 5 years because I was like, that's my goal. I didn't have any other goals in mind. Didn't do any other running really. Obviously, I still stayed at the gym. I always find some sort of way to exercise. But then basically COVID is where it all sort of returned there, Dan. And when you say about that idea of meditation, it was just exploring. And the whole time I run, I listen and train my mind at the same time. So I'm constantly listening to audiobooks and podcasts and just trying to take it as a moment to focus. I find it really hard to walk around a house listening to a podcast or driving in a car. But when it comes to running, it's like my internal dialogue just kind of quietens down, and I just hear what I want to listen to. So I've listened to things as far back as Marcus Aurelius's. I can't remember the name of the book now.
Meditations.
Meditations. There we go.
Yeah.
And that's 2,000 years old, and I was running through the woods in Russia, in the snow, like knee deep snow, -15, -20, listening to meditations by Marcus Aurelius. It was a really, really sort of cool experience. And if I just sort of close on that point by coming back to the original part, for me, it's all about just like that. It's me time. I'm completely switched off. There's nothing but me, my thoughts, or what I'm listening to, or ingesting what I'm listening to. It's a brilliant experience. I definitely recommend it for anyone. Once you get there, and as I'm sure we'll talk about some more soon, is like it just becomes more and more addictive. How far can you go? How fast can you go? And it's interesting to see what your sort of limits are.
Yeah. I mean, going back to when you were talking about how you had a goal when you were aiming for that 5K, and you literally just went out to run. And I think a lot of people like yourself, and that's how the Teachers Run Club started, was noticing the amount of teachers and people that were getting back into or starting running for the first time during that first lockdown, or during the sort of COVID period, and using it as a way to get that time out of their house. And when everyone was sort of locked up together and you had an hour or so to get out, and they were using it to get some headspace. How do you decide? Because I probably got my own answer to this as well, but how do you decide if it's a run where you're just going no music, no podcasts, leaving the phone at home and just listening to the world, or when do you know, actually I think I need a bit of motivation here? Like for me, I'll often listen to Eddie Pinero, and if you haven't listened to him, he's an absolutely brilliant
Yeah,
motivational
yeah.
speaker. And if I need to go a bit quicker, I'm putting him on. But then if I'm having a long relaxing run, I might leave it at home completely. What for you kind of guides what you're going to listen to or not?
It's a good question, and it's funny that you mentioned, what was his name, Eddie?
Eddie
Eddie what?
Pinero.
Eddie Pinero. That was one of the first bits of sort of personal development, or something I used to listen to when I started running. As you said, he is a very, very good inspirational speaker. But to answer your questions, basically every run of mine, I take my phone. I have a iPhone 12 Pro Max, so it's quite big. So I have a little bum bag, and I just pop it in there. I've got my AirPods that I run with, but they'll come with me everywhere. I rarely listen to music, but in regards to the styles of runs that I do, I like to vary it up. I'll try to aim for, in sort of peak training, I would say 3 different runs per week. One is going to be short and fast, because I just want to know, well, what can I do? And sometimes, then, even there, I'll head out the door and I go, I'm just going to go for a run. I'm just going to do like 5, 10K, something like that. And suddenly I've done like 3K, because I run in miles. So suddenly I've done like 2 miles. I'm like, oh, they're quick. Like, they don't feel quick, they're quick. And suddenly I find myself like aiming for a new record. And I could have like Marcus Aurelius playing on in the background, just chatting about his life 2,000 years ago. So I definitely would be interested in running with someone, changing up the music, and kind of seeing what difference that would make. But for me, it's just about just getting out and seeing where you go. Sometimes I'll even just go running, having no idea how far I'm going to go. Especially if I link this back to Russia, I was running through this enormous forest. I knew it like the back of my hand at the end, but at the beginning I would just go, I'm going to turn left. And I had no idea where it would go. There would be big hills in there, big like logs to climb over, and it's just go. Just go.
And it wasn't just like running in the UK forest, was it? I'm sure you had a few other animals you needed to worry about as well.
Well, actually, the idea of that was definitely there. Running over in the UK, knowing that there's no animals here that can harm you, obviously, other than dogs, that's a completely different experience. The first time I ran in this forest in Russia, I stayed close to the edge of it. I was like, I have no idea if there's bears in there, wolves in there, anything at all. Lo and behold, there wasn't actually basically any wildlife at all. It was really strange. But I did come across 2 snakes once, and the first time I saw them, bear in mind, it was only the size of a pencil. The second time it was bigger. But the first time I saw it, I was riding over all these ruts where quad bikes and stuff had been through. I was on the tail end of like a half marathon, something like that. And I absolutely stacked it and landed like face down right next to this snake, and it just slithered off. But it certainly does put you on edge, though, when you're running. You don't know what's there, because obviously your mind will sort of play some tricks on you. But
Yeah,
it was a different
I
experience.
get that. I get that when I go swimming in the lake. And there was one time in
Yes.
particular where I'd convinced myself there was a lake shark.
Yes.
Obviously, no
Yes.
such thing. But
Yeah, I
my
did the
head
same.
had, my head had just told me, oh yeah, lake shark. Okay.
Yeah.
When you were talking about how you're very kind of loose with what you're going to do, and sometimes you might go out to do 5K and you kind of realize, oh, actually, I'm onto a really good run here. A lot of what I've noticed through the Teachers Run Club, specifically on Twitter, is how people are going out and they're just running on feel. And I'm very
Mm.
different from that. I'm very meticulous with my training, and I know what I'm aiming for, or I know, right, I've got an hour on a Tuesday night, that's what I need to do. And I always find it really amazing when people can just go out and just completely run on feel, not got anything to train for, just really enjoying being out and running. Which for me, I find really alien, because I need to have an event to train for and be motivated for.
Yeah.
So I find that really interesting, that how we're all so different, and how we can be motivated and inspired by different things. You were a bit unlucky with your events, weren't you? You had a few planned, and am I right in saying that all of them you were unable to run in person? They all ended up being virtual.
Yeah, correct. So my first event I'd ever signed up for, I think, was a triathlon, Olympic distance. I was like, you know what have I got to lose? Like, I'll be able to complete it. Just don't know how long. So I started training for that, and then boom, COVID hit, cancelled. At the same time, then a half marathon was booked straight after that, cancelled. All rescheduled for the next year and everything. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to run it by myself. I'll do the triathlon by myself. So I remember just doing it in this big lake in the community that I was living in. So I started off my swim, got out, jumped on the bike. I did it on a turbo trainer in the end because I didn't feel safe going exploring streets of Moscow that I didn't know, and then finish off with a 10K just running by myself. And then similar to the half marathon, unfortunately, I did get cancelled twice, and the full Moscow marathon as well. So I never got to get a single medal around my neck. But nonetheless, it didn't matter. It was just going, yeah, I can run a half marathon. Oh, I wonder if can I? Yeah, I can run a marathon. Let me just choose a time. Yeah, I'll run a sub 3:30. I got a 3:31 in the end. But it was just about going. It wasn't about the events. I know, like, some people, obviously, that extra motivation or the competition is a factor, but for me it wasn't. It would be great. I mean, right, I'd love to go for a competitive run with you someday. I'm checking out your times. I've managed to chip away at a couple of your records. That was a motivating factor for me. But just to go out and run was, yeah, that's what it's about.
Yeah, I think, I mean, definitely we do need to sign up for an event and do one together because, like you say, we're not too far off in terms of speeds. And I think that's like, bringing this back to for teachers and educators that are listening about setting up these run clubs at your schools. And you're going to have people that are from all different abilities and being able to create something that is, accessible to everyone. And you might find that if you're setting up a run club, you're actually targeting teachers or educators who are maybe first timers. You might think that the people who are runners have already got something that they're doing, but people want to help people, especially, the running community is fantastic. And if you've got people at your school who already do run, they would be the first person I'd be approaching about helping set something up. I mean, what about you, Rich? Have you found any of the schools that you've worked in have had running clubs set up at them, or fitness classes, or anything specifically aimed at teacher wellbeing from a fitness point of view?
No, I haven't. Um, when I was doing my placement, I know that we had there was a yoga club in the school. It was very informal, just a few teachers here and there. But obviously, since then, I've been teaching internationally, and it's a bit of a different world in that sense. You're the people that you work with are your family, but at the same time, you switch off and go and do your own things as well. But in the school that I was just in Russia, we actually created a little running group. There was about 6 of us in the end, and quite a few of them really got into it. They went from never really running to they've you got the Moscow marathon. Moscow half marathon is I think it's on the weekend, and they're still booked up for it because it's been rescheduled. But in regards to led by schools or even just people within the schools, no, not where I was. This was more like people knew that I ran. Oh, this person runs too, and then we just formed our own little community there, and it was definitely a strong community. There was a lot of support that was given to each other, little motivations, the kudos on Strava after each run. It was good. It was good.
That's good. I think that's how a lot of these things start as well. One or two people start, and then the next person joins, and before you know it, you've got 7, 8, 9 people meeting up to run. That leads nicely on to the next sort of questions I wanted to talk to you about, because something that I'm really passionate about is fundraising and using active teachers, and this is massively what Teachers Run Club is about, is using the active teachers to motivate and inspire pupils. If the pupils are seeing their teachers are active and the teachers are sharing that active journey with the pupils, they're seeing that it's not just, PE, I'm a child, I have to do what I'm told, I have to be active during PE, and I can't wait till I'm older and I don't have to do this. We're trying to create this love of activity that they're going to want to do as they grow up. And actually, I'm going to change tack slightly because I wanted to talk about how we're going to come back to the fundraising. I think it's a good time to talk about, you and I were both massively active as we were younger. We already said we played hockey. We were both massively involved in PE, just general sports we both loved. A lot of people that I see, or, I'm talking about teachers because that's the audience we've got here. They've got back into running, but maybe they didn't actually run or be active since they themselves were at school, or they had a really negative experience of PE when they were at school, which has meant that they haven't come back into sport now. Maybe a better question would be, how much do you think your active childhood impacted your activity level as you got older?
So if we look at that one, I'd say quite significantly. Obviously, it's somewhat it could be like personal interests, the individual, the agency of that person. But for me, obviously, like growing up, like with a group of friends that we had, the camaraderie there, like playing hockey for years, and then suddenly like we're pushing ourselves. I know obviously you went to GB, and we played South England together, and then obviously changing teams there to get to like your your kind of peak, the best that you can be. I think that then if you carry that on for years, it definitely does help. Obviously, like every P lesson was my favorite lesson. I did AS level P as well, then went on to college. So it all just kind of stayed in that background. I wouldn't necessarily, I would say I was inspired by any of the teachers or anything like that. But I think potentially it was like obviously our late coach could have been a big factor, and so just that group that's there.
Yeah, it's having those role models and finding them, and it doesn't necessarily have to be PE. And if you're listening to this and you're thinking, well, I don't even teach PE, you could have a massive impact on the pupils that you teach in terms of their active lives just because of the conversations you're having with them, or asking them about what they're doing on the weekend, and oh, did you ride to school, or promoting the things that are local to you. Did you know that there's a free football club at the weekend that you can join, or did you know that you could go and do family badminton or swimming, and taking away the competitive side. And something
Yeah.
that I really push at my school is sport for all, and there is a sport for everyone, or an activity for everyone. And it doesn't have to be competitive, but ensuring that those children that need that competition have it, because you and I are very similar in the sense that we were motivated and pushed each other through competition. And so, like when I'm running, I'm always trying to push myself, and that's something I've had to learn, because I've gone from playing, like you, a team sport where you're part of a
Mm.
team, you're competing with your teammates as well, bit of friendly rivalry, to something where it's 100% you. Running, triathlon, whatever it is. If you don't get that 20-minute 5K, you can't blame anyone else. You can only blame yourself and work out how you're going to get past that hurdle. And that hurdle might be a 20-minute 5K. It might be completing couch to 5K, or whatever. For anyone, it's all relative. So yeah, I think that what I'm kind of getting at is, I really hope that as teachers now, we are giving children more of a all-round better experience of sport and activity in school, so that you don't get that massive drop off of exercise that I think a lot of people now are refinding, people our sort of age.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if I was to say, like, if I look at what you've been doing, all of the talks on the TV, the radio, obviously the dialogue that we have together, I think that is fantastic, Dan. Because if you just link back to our school experience there, and you go, it was very. Again, I'm sure a lot of the listeners of our age all had similar experiences, but it was very. I can't think of the word now, but basically you'd have football, rounders, rugby, a bit of track. That was kind of it, and a bit of badminton as well. Or obviously, if you remember when we had a supply teacher for weeks on end, it'd be back to back table tennis. So in regards to finding in, yeah, I loved it, especially when we put the double tables together. But that there to trying to capture a sort of love and activity for every child that was there or every student. Yeah, I think you're definitely cutting the circle down for them. But
Yeah.
here, yeah, yeah, definitely a big change in what's happening today. So hopefully, with the work that you're doing there, continues to just sort of have that impact, and that there with education, like that can change the world quite literally.
Yeah, it can. And I think that luckily that whole philosophy of sport and activity for children is changing across the board. And a lot more teachers and a lot more schools are becoming wise to the fact that, what, we're not trying to create the next, Jessica Ennis-Hill or Mo Farah here. Yes, that's brilliant if we can. And we do need these people. But actually, more importantly, we just need people to enjoy being active and wanting to go out and walk and ride their bike and play table tennis or go climbing, or whatever it is. My wife recently did a hit session, which was based on drumming with Swiss balls, and it was like the hardest workout that she said that she'd been involved in, but it was so much fun.
Yeah.
And there's no reason why more and more of that stuff can't happen. Right. I'm going to go back to the previous question, because I wanted to talk about fundraising. And you and I
Mm.
work in very, very different schools. And you've already said you're kind of working in more of a private school setting, international school. And I'm based in like a large primary school. in a fairly deprived area of the country. So when it comes to fundraising, we probably have really different thoughts or ideas on what we might get. And you did a half marathon to raise funds in your school, didn't you, for a student?
Yeah, that's correct. So there was a girl in the school that still needs a new heart, and it's all been funded for now. It's now just the actual finding the heart sort of thing. Um, and basically, the school continued to come together again and again, like numerous events. And like during this period, like we all came together as a three campuses, over 1,500 students. Like you can imagine how big the network was there as well. Um, and basically, we decided, you know what, we're going to do a run for this girl. And originally, it was going to be the Moscow half marathon, again cancelled. So we said, you know what, we'll just do it anyway. And then bearing in mind there, so if we look at it for the fundraising, you know, you'd get what you'd kind of imagine, I'd say, usual support, you know, five, tens, 20s, £50 here and there, the occasional hundreds. And then, fortunately, the industry or the network that we were in, we actually had like a large donations, which were real surprise. Like I think one parent paid like $8,000, I think it was, or pounds as a donation. So it really carried anywhere from your just basically your coffee price all the way up to quite a lot. And I can't remember how much we raised in it. I think it was like just shy of £10,000 or something like that.
It's incredible to think, and it doesn't take anything away from what people are going to fundraise in their own schools. Because going back to what we said about running earlier, it's all relative to your community and your environment. But those figures are just incredible, and it just shows that people really, really, truly want to help. And if you ask, and if you do things in the right way, and you put on the events in the right way, you will get that support. And you would have shown the parents what you were willing to do and the efforts that you guys were going to go to essentially save a student's life, which there's nothing that comes more than that, is there?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So in my kind of environment, we if we were raised doing a fundraiser day, £600 to £800 across the day, that's a standard really good amount that we've raised. And I suppose from what people are able to give, it's all percentage wise, isn't it? If you earn X amount and you pay and you donate X amount, that's a percentage of what your earning is. So if you earn more and you pay more, it almost works out the same. Um, I just can't get my head around how generous families are, especially if you're coming from an area where families are maybe struggling themselves. Yet they're still really willing to give and support with your fundraising. And I'm not sure on the answer to this. With your run, did you involve the students at all? Were they, I know they didn't take part in the half marathon, but how involved were they in the active side of what you were doing?
So I did try to get the children involved at school, but they already had an event coming up. So they did a run around the school sort of thing as a non. Actually, no, I think they did a sponsored form. But it was all in the light of like all these different events going on, from art galleries to bake sales and stuff. So I kind of got lost in that. But I did try to encourage all friends and family connected with the school and not to just come in and join us on Strava. I took your advice on there, Dan, and basically we said go and walk, walk, jog, run, or race as far as you want to on that day. So we had a couple of children did join in, which is great to see. They actually added me on Strava, funny enough, did it with their parents. And we just kind of collect those miles. And it was just nice to see just a few extra people like running running for a cause, like just on that one day, a few training sessions beforehand. And then, they'd go off and run just, in 3-4 miles, 5 miles, something like that, when they wouldn't normally run. So it was a good experience, and it was good to see.
That's nice. I like when you said that they wouldn't normally run. You're kind of reaching out to those groups of children where you have had, you don't know what they're going to go on and do now, but that one particular event could really influence them going forward. And you're reaching groups that might otherwise have done nothing in terms of an activity level, and you've given them an option to take part. And that's something that I'm always really passionate about. Any event that I put on at the school is how can I get the children involved? How can I get other staff involved? How can I get, as many members of the community involved as possible? And as you know, I've got this sort of big bike challenge coming up, and hopefully you're going to be joining us for some of it as we
Yeah, for
cycle
sure.
through Wales. And as I'm planning it with my colleague, we're like, right, we want to get 400 or 500 people involved in this. There's 6 of us riding, but we want to impact and influence as many people as possible, just to
Yeah,
make it as wide a reach. And I hope for teachers listening, when they are planning these fun, active days, you do start to think it's not just about the children. How can the staff? So if you're doing a race for life, it's for the children, but yeah, get the adults running. They'll have a brilliant time, and also the children will love seeing the adults dressed up and getting involved and running too. It really just gives it a little bit of an extra fun element, which I love.
yeah, definitely, definitely. The children will always, especially like the primary children, they'll love seeing their parents involved. Like it would mean so much to them. So even if that parent is just there walking, but just with an elevated heart rate when they're there, or they're actually gone for a run and running with them or something, like definitely get them involved. It's magic.
It is, and then sharing afterwards. I find a lot of things we do in school, and it's brilliant, and they've had a great time. But then I'm always asking the question of, what's next. And so for one of them, we worked with Parkrun, Junior Parkrun, and they came down and did set up Junior Parkrun at the field next to our school, and we invited the parents to join in with them, and then we gave them all the details on, right, Junior Parkrun is literally happening every, Sunday morning around the corner from our school. Get down there and get involved. And that, you want, if a child's loved what they've done, you want them to be able to find out how to do it next, rather than it being like, oh, that was fun, and then never do it again.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, we've jumped around all over the place, but I think we've covered loads of really, really good stuff. And before we finish, I want to talk about what your next venture is, because you were talking to me about it the other week. You were talking to my son about it, and he was really keen on the idea. So this is your Minecraft education. So I'm not going to say any more, because I want you to share what you're doing and the successes you've had with it. So yeah, let us know.
All right. So Minecraft, stumbled across it, first deterred it. I realized what an incredible experience it is for learning. And I took up that opportunity and just went, you know what? There's something to be made out of this. So I started up my own tutoring services, teaching children how to code using Minecraft, and just loved watching the children learn. The engagement there was just through the roof. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to take this up to another level now. So at the moment, I'm kind of working on it as a project to go come away from the classroom, come away from being just like traditional primary school teacher, and go, well, how can I spread my impact and go, there's children out there that have got an imagination, magic inside of them, and how are we going to get those children to be able to unleash what they're capable of? So the project at the moment, Dan, is to go around to schools and help schools introduce it, either for me to go in and teach classes of children or teach the children how to do it. And also look for some after school activity clubs as well, for those come away from maybe the curriculum for a little while and just go, well, could we work on a sustainability project instead, as that after school activity? So I definitely have to give you some more information on that as it develops, because it's still in the sort of earlier phases at the moment. I'm still currently working full time. So I'm just trying to fit that in while studying for my master's in education at the same time. And then, of course, fitting in time to run too. But that's it in a nutshell. It's teaching children to learn using Minecraft, or developing their learning through Minecraft.
It's such a brilliant concept. The stuff that my children come out with, that they are aware of, like when we're out walking and they're naming all these trees, and they wouldn't know
Yeah.
that if they weren't playing that game. And one of my colleagues said to me the other day, one of the children, they'd found a word in a book, and he didn't know what it was. He'd never heard of it before. He went to get the dictionary out, and all the children told him exactly what it meant, because they knew it was some sort of material that they'd learned through Minecraft.
Obsidian or something like
Yeah, I think
that.
it probably was. Yeah, something like
Yeah,
that. And
Obsidian.
and he was blown away by the fact that he didn't know this fact, and that children all knew it. So there's such a demand for it, and I think with how everyone has got so used to virtually learning and using the computer to be able to teach and be taught, you really got an endless possibility of who you can work with, and I wish you all the best, and I really look forward to seeing how that works out over the next few weeks, months, and years. My
Well,
final question to you is, what's next? Have you got any active challenges or events that you're aiming towards at the moment, or that you're booked onto?
I'm in the design phase at the moment. I've just reached out to a PT who does like strength and conditioning because I'm interested to see what I'm capable of. I've very close to the sub 18 barrier in a 5K with no real intentions of doing that. I am also interested to see like how far I can run. So I'm running to the top of these mountains over in the valleys of Wales, and going, well, how long would it take me actually to run from here as far as I can see? So still in the design phase at the moment, but certainly looking for speed is going to be one of them, and then distance is going to be the other. But I've now got my road bike as well, so I might be getting back into triathlons and yeah, design phase at the moment. Dan, design
That's the
phase.
fun. That's the fun bit before the torture of the training begins. Sounds like an ultra marathon on your hands there, maybe.
Yeah, it's definitely not far away. It's been a while since I've done a long one, but as you'll know, and obviously we're short for time now, but just becomes to a point running when you go, you've gone 3 miles, then suddenly you've done 6 miles, then suddenly you've done a half marathon, you've done a marathon. You go, well, like where can it go? Because you go and find yourself running 18 miles just for a bit of fun. Sounds crazy when you're first starting, but before long, you're just exploring. It's like almost like you're a child again, just exploring that terrain, not knowing where you're going or what's going on, and just being free.
Yeah, and I think when you take away that training aspect of it, and it's a bit like your Sunday ride where you stop at the coffee shop, have a bit of coffee and a cake or whatever, and then you head back, that almost the time doesn't matter. And
Yeah,
it is mad to think. And if you are someone who's listening to this, and I've mentioned this in the last podcast, if you're listening to this thinking, God, I haven't even got to week 3 of Couch to 5K, and you're talking about enjoying an 18-mile run, that sounds like the worst thing that I can imagine. If you stick with it, you might just get there, and it's a bit of a bug, because you're always looking for the next thing that you want to achieve. Rich, thank you so much for giving us this time. I look forward to chatting to you again soon.
well, Dan, thank you very much for having me on. It's been a real pleasure. It's been awesome watching your journey over the last couple of years, getting to where you are today, and just I'm sure many people have joined me here and saying thank you for the contribution you're having on society and the impact you're having on many children's lives and teachers as well. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. I will. I'll speak to you again soon. And for everyone listening, thank you for tuning in, and keep an eye out because we'll have a few more episodes coming up in the near future. Thank you. Bye bye.